Okay, so we are on our day 6. I hope this is how you have also renamed your file. And I wanted us to start with an opening prayer. Anyone who can volunteer? I remember Dr. Ruth used to say that a good day starts with a prayer. So she has been a mother to us, and I know Dr. Soib is also happy because we are pushing on with the recess program. It's 2 months, some 2 weeks. I hope you get the foundation, then we start real business. We're about to start real business. When I look at the outline, it shows that we are almost there. I think by this week, we might be done with handling the foundations. And then we start on what? Start on the serious business. And that is going to be data science, machine learning, and then web development with Flask or Django. Today, we're going to look at error handling in Python. We're going to look at exception handling with try block, try code, or try block, except, else, and finally. The whole idea here is just to understand what does the try mean, okay? What does the except means? What does the else mean? And what does the finally means? And how do you implement all that in your code? It's always good to take some notes. This notes helps you basically when referring to the normal way how to talk about this. When you're going to talk about error handling in Python, basically, it helps to handle unexpected situations and errors. But you know very well that there are times when you, like, let's say you want to divide a number. Okay, normally when you divide a number by 0, what happens? You normally run into an error even when you're using a calculator, not so. So because 0 is not divisible. So we're going to try to handle such kind of, let the user know that there are exceptions where you need to throw in errors or raise errors. Now, Python provides a structured way to catch and manage exceptions. So to catch and manage exceptions, Python uses what we call the try. Now the try, basically, the try contains code that might throw an exception. Okay. Now, if an exception occurs, the rest of the code in the try block is skipped. Okay. So if an exception occurs, the rest of the code in the try block is skipped or ignored. So now that's the only thing that you need to master for now. Because if you know that the try block contains a code that might throw an exception. But once the exception occurs, that block of code is skipped or ignored. So those are the key notes that you need to take when handling exceptions. I'll show you the syntax, how it looks like when you reach that part. We have one, then the second one, because I don't want you to ask me, we need notes. No, these are your notes now. Except okay. Now, except catches and handles the exception. This is catches and handle exceptions. Basically, if a specified exception occurs, the except part of the code will try to catch and handle the exception. So the NB of this is that if basically you can specify different handlers for different exception types. We're going to look at the syntax of the except later. So I just want you to have the understanding of this. Once you have the understanding, it's going to be easier. You would be able to ask less questions. Now, there's a part which is the else. Now, the else, in most cases, what happened is that the code runs if no exceptions occurs. Okay? The except here, the else, I mean, the code runs if no exception occurs. So, in other words, if you don't raise an exception in the try block, it will basically run. If you don't if let me just use simple English. If no exception are raised in the try block, it runs. So if you don't put an exceptions, the else part of the code what it will do, it will run. That means if you want to raise that exception, you need to put it in the try block. And finally, the last one, which is finally, what it does, the code runs no matter what, okay? Whether there's exception or there's no exception, the code runs. So it runs whether an exception is raised, stroke, occurred, or not. So what is it mainly used for? Use for cleanup actions. So when you see the part of the final, it means that code runs whether an exception occurs or it doesn't occur. Is that okay? That is the main thing that will happen with such kind of what? Exceptions. Now, I want us to see if we can try to use the simple understanding of this logic in our example one. Now, in our example one, normally I give you an example as you understand. Try, okay. Under exception with division by 0. Now that's how handle exceptions with division by 0. We want to try to handle an exceptions with division by 0, okay? And here, what we basically try to look for is that we want to create exceptions. We want to try to handle these errors, how they come. Let's say we have a try block, okay? We have a try block of code here. Now in the try block, what we are going to do is that we're going to raise an exception, like number. Some people, num can be for number, but let me just say number. We are going to input a number, so which is an integer. Why I'm using the int. So the number, then you enter a number. Okay? Now, when you enter the number, what I want you to do is you can have the result, which can be maybe trying like dividing a number. Now, this is the part of the code that we are trying to raise an exception, okay? Because we are going to allow you enter any number. But once you enter a 0, or you enter a number which is not an integer, we will try to raise different types of error, like value error, which catches if the number is not an integer. So we may try to use a little bit of the camel case, especially if dealing with a few things here. It doesn't matter, but just to allow you get some difference. So accept a value error. So we're going to try to say the accept code is basically trying to do what? Is trying to catch an error. So let us just get an output from the print. You can use double quote and say invalid number, okay? Then you let the user know that please enter a valid number. Now, you will try to enter maybe alphabets, and you try to see what will happen. So in this case, where the input is supposed to be an integer, as long as you put something which is not an integer, it will say invalid number. So that is how you're trying to what? Raise an exception. Now, we can have several exceptions. That's the first exception. You can also do another except. This time round, let's try to divide the number by 0. 0 division error. We're not yet dealing with exponentials. Now, for 0, what is the output? Print. And you can say this is an error. That's an error. And you can say division by 0 is not allowed. Excuse me. Division by 0 is not allowed. Now, so we have two types of exceptions here. Now, what happens if you're finished with this type of exceptions or types of error? You can now create the else block of the code and say, if you enter a valid number, then you can print the results of the number. And then you can say print, let's have it as a formatted string. You use the F and then result is, then we get the result. Then we will now use the finally. Final is just to say you've completed running the code, which means the code always runs. Print and say execution finished or completed successfully. Now, I'm going to try to explain this line of code one by one so that you understand. So the try, this raises, okay, may raise an exception if you try to put value error or division error. Then the 0 division error is that you cannot divide a number by 0. Okay? So in this case, where you're trying to divide, you attempt to divide a number by 0, it will throw you this error. It will print for you this message. Then else, if the condition satisfies, then you just get the results. Finally, when all these checks are complete within the try block, within the exception, within the error handling, then you can say execution complete. Now, you can go ahead and try it out. Python 3, then you put your so let's start with let's put A and press enter. What do we get? We immediately get invalid number. Please enter a valid number. Execution complete. Because we put a string instead of an integer. Okay? Now let's try the second one. This time let's put 0. We get definitely the 0 number. Error. Division by 0 is not allowed. Now let's try with a valid number like 5. Then you get the results right away and execution completed. So this is how you handle exceptions in Python. I'm going to give you one exercise, then 1 or 2. Okay, normally. We'll take questions. Let's first get exercise to try to see, then can take questions from there. I want to look for a good exercise for you. I'm just trying to see what could be most applicable here. Okay, let me not give it so hard for you. Okay, you try this exercise. Write a function, because you also handle some bit of function. Write a function that converts a string to an integer and handle both value error if the string can not be converted as as the string cannot be converted as an integer, and the type error, if the type error is here, let me put it in quote. No, you can put it yourself. If the input is not a string, then two, use multiple except block to handle these exceptions. Okay, good enough for you. So happy I use everything. Can I stop sharing and you share your screen? Or I give you 1 or 2 minutes. I hope you've seen the question. At the same time, also use this time to register. I've put for you the registration link. Hey guys, share your screen. You're still working, eh?
Yes.
Okay. Pressure for pressure. Hey guys, don't take forever. Guys, don't take forever. Eh?
So you've disabled the screen sharing.
Okay, that's what I was waiting for. I'm done. You could try that.
Hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
So I've defined my function to convert to an integer. So I first try to get an input from the user, like which is in form of a string, because I'm not doing any conversion from the input. So initially, I'm trying to anything I get from the user is treated as a string. Then after the obtained value from the user from the standard input, let's say from the keyboard, I try now to convert it into the string by using like the result is equal to int the value. That is value conversion. I'm trying to pass the input, like I'm trying to pass it to an integer value. Then here I try to use the print format, like to print out my result. Then after my first exception, I first raise like a value error, then and I print out like maybe the provided string cannot be converted to an integer. Then I also put another exception, which is a type error, then which handles the case where the input is not a string. Then I also include like the finary to show like okay, to clean up the code execution. So from there, I call what? I call I call my function, which is convert to integer. So when I come to my terminal, let me first expand a little bit for great visibility. So when I run my script, okay, this one is for the previous example that we are doing. So from here, I can start now with, let's say, enter value to convert to an integer. So for the first time, if I enter a string, let's say like 5, automatically I get like, I raise the exception error, which is like the provided string can't be converted to an integer. So when I try to run again my code with the maybe with the varied data. Let's say if I put like 6, though it is obtained from the user keyboard as a string, but it can be converted easily to an int. So when I run it, then the converted string like gets printed and the finary block also gets executed, which is like execution completed. So shows like the conversion is taking place. But if you enter automatically like uh, a string literal which can't be converted to an integer, then it raises the value, the exception of the value error. So I guess that's all I can. That's all I have.
Thank you. That's a good one. Thank you, Lauben. Could you have another person? Thank you. Could we have one more person, a lady? Hey, okay. Seems you people don't want to add on more example. When you see people not sharing, their screen shows that the concept is getting tighter. Not so? Okay. That's understandable. And that is the part of life we live in. We have nothing different that we can do. You want to share your screen?
Yeah, I would like to share.
You want? Okay, thank you. Please share your screen.
Good morning, everyone. This is my program. Though it's not far away different from what Lauben has just presented. I have this is a function name. Then I input the string into an int. Then in case this try block throws an a value error, we are going to handle it from here using this except. And now here I'm trying to access the value error object such that I can print the default message also. Same thing, if we have a type error, we shall raise it from here. And then afterwards, in case there is nothing to do with these errors, we shall print the result. So let me try calling it from here. Convert int. Yeah. So let me try running. This is for the first part. So as you can see here, exercise 1. So it starts from here. So when I input a string, let's say hello. So here there's an error, that value error invalidated for int with base. So we have entered this, yet it expected to, like hello can't be converted to a string using this function, right? So let's try with a number. So when I try with a number, let's say 10, so it prints my result. As you can see, this object I tried to call from the value error class, it can also help you print the default value error message. As you can see, this message here, it is due to this object from this value error class that I'm calling. Yeah, that's all I had to share with you.
Okay. Thank you. I honestly have different ways of handling those kind of exceptions, but let's make it unique with the practical situations that we deal with. At least you have understood the concept, because the more you do these exercises, you keep learning. But that was a good one. Thank you, Laben and Ahabe, for sharing with us your code. Now, I'm now going to talk about another interesting exceptions that it's a little bit practical. and you have always experienced this. Now, how many of you have ever seen this kind of errors? You go to the bank, that is for people with bank account, okay? And you go to withdraw money and you put in certain amount of money, like 10,000, and your account is having less than 10,000. What kind of error do you get? Insufficient balance or funds are insufficient. Why do you think those errors are always custom made? Just to make the user be happy from the feedback they get when they're interacting with a machine to get their money. Because when it comes to money and people are trying to withdraw, or even when you're buying airtime using mobile money, and you put an amount which is beyond what you have in your bank account, in your mobile money account, you're normally greeted with that message, insufficient balance. So that's why exceptions are very important, because they provide the user with the feedback. Now, we're going to look at the custom exceptions, because we know very well that Python also has its own defined ways of handling exceptions. There are built-in exceptions with classes that are used to handle specific error types that makes our code more readable and easier to debug. When we want to debug and want to have a more readable ways of handling our exceptions, so we can try to use inherit. Of course, I don't know if you already started looking at classes, inheritance. Of course, okay, sorry, inheritance and polymorphism. I will handle it on Wednesday. But at least I can talk about inheritance, where you can inherit from the subclass to from the derived class. We'll talk more about inheritance. Most of you have parents. When your parents die, you go and inherit their properties, right? For those ones whose parents have properties. Now, for those ones whose parents don't have properties, then you will be treated with this error that, sorry, you do not have anything to inherit. But it's funny, but that is the reality of life. I like joking about it, but okay, that is it. We all know the truth, right? Now, how do we handle, especially when it comes to money, our money in the bank? We're going to try to learn a little bit of inheritance, okay? As we try to check our value. Because to handle custom exceptions, you just need to know how you can play around with what? With classes, which I know Livingston, I don't know whether he has handled classes with you, but still I will talk about the classes. And then I'll try to handle these exceptions with you. Let me first handle it using a source code. Then I'll give you 1 or 2, 3, 4 examples. Then you can move on. Okay? Yeah. Then we will start inheritance and polymorphism. Then abstractions, classes, I think those ones Livingston is going to handle them. But still, I can talk about it. Now, let's say we are making, we are going to basically first raise basically exception raised for error in the input. If funds are insufficient. We all have these practical life examples. Now, let's create first a class. We are going to create a class, and this class is going to take in the functions. Just like tab 9 is suggesting for me here. But let's make it more readable. The class, we can call it what? Okay. But let's rename this function so that it's insufficient. We are using a different way of naming it. We're not using the camel case. We're going to use this. We're not using the snake case. We're using the camel case. Insufficient funds. If insufficient funds, error. Now, this is the function. Now, when you have a function, first, we need to self-initialize. What are we interested in? We are interested in the money we have and the balance. So in an attempt, we try to withdraw money that it's beyond what we have. It should return a message that shows us that our money is not enough. Should try to raise for us what? An exception, especially if we are trying to withdraw money and our balance is, our account balance is low. So it's a more advanced way of dealing with it, but let's try to see. We are going to define a self-initializing method that takes in self, and then we will have balance and amount. Don't worry about this. This is just self-initializing so that whenever we try to self-initialize to get a different message, when we are withdrawing, it should be able to do for us that exceptions. So we can say self balance. Basically, it will self-initialize the balance. And we can do that for amount as well. Then we can also have for self, this time round is a message. Always when you're withdrawing your money, you need that message. Sorry. So we need a message. And what is the message? Insufficient fund. Now let's try to be a little bit like programmers. We can have a formatted string and say attempt to withdraw. Withdraw. Then we can have here like self. Let's start with amount. Okay, let's start with amount. I know sometimes the things can be very funny when you're thinking and writing it. Amount with only, and then self balance. In account. That is what you have in your account. Okay. Hopefully we don't have any error. But if you have any error, we'll try to check it. So we're going to use a super method here. A super method. We will not pass in any arguments, any keyword arguments on it, so that it can need it to initialize. So that we can pass in a self message. Yeah, message. Okay. So this is how we deal with handling classes. Then I will show you how this will work, and I will explain. Don't worry, I'll explain everything. Then we'll try to withdraw. The withdraw method can take in what? This time we can take in a balance amount. Then we can write a simple logic here because we did have if together, right? If amount is greater than balance, we need to raise an exception. So if amount is greater than balance, if what you want to withdraw is greater than balance, what do we need to raise? We need to raise insufficient funds error. Funds error of what? Balance and amount. Then we can return. Oops. We can return. What do we want to get? We want to get balance minus amount. Now, let's try to raise this kind of exceptions now. You've created the class, you have defined the functions for withdrawing. Now, we want to try using custom exception handling. Now, here what we are interested in is that you're going to try and do what? If our balance let me create some jokes. Most students have balance which are like like 10K on their account. Let's try to be sufficient. Okay. So okay, let me even go higher. As just 20K, and then we can try to create another variable here for amount withdraw. Amount to withdraw. Now you want to withdraw 100K. Crazy, right? So, and we have your new balance, which is going to be if you have installed Copilot, please be very careful when writing your code. Sometimes you keep pressing tab and you throw in only errors. Amount to withdraw. So you can see now what it's trying to mess me here. This is what I want. Okay. Now I can now use the except part and say insufficient fund error. And then we are going to print the error message and say error. Then you can get it from the error message. That's the exceptions we want to raise from error message. Then else then you can print a formatted message which says with withdrawal successful. Then new balance is, we can check it from the new balance. Balance. This. Okay, we don't need that. Okay, then we could do the final. This final is basically, we can let you know that the transaction is what is completed. Finally, we can print transaction completed. I hope we don't have any errors. Because if you have any error, we'll try to see. Okay. So the purpose of this exercise is to demonstrate how we can define custom exceptions, which we did here by using a class so that we can have custom exception for a specific case. And this case is when we are dealing with amounts and balances. So we also have the super, which basically helps us to initialize the messages. Okay. Then we also decided to define the functions here so that when we are raising our custom exceptions, it is self-check if the amount is greater than balance. Then we can have the what? Insufficient fund error. And then we try to demonstrate how we can handle these exceptions by withdrawing what is beyond what we have on our account. And in that way, if we run this, we're going to get an error of insufficient fund because the amount of money we are trying to withdraw, it's not what we have on our balance. So let's try to run this. If there's any error, we'll try to debug it. I don't see any error in the. Oops. Okay. Related with this thing. I think that was for the first one. Okay. Oh. Okay, so we get this error, which is because of the money which we are trying to withdraw here. Okay. Let's say we want to withdraw something which is a little bit reasonable, like 15K. Okay. Forget about the other first part, but you can see execution completed. Withdraw successful. New balance is what? 5,000. When we try to do an amount which is beyond, the first number I'm entering is just, okay, let's just change here to 25. 25K. No, this is for the first one. We get that error because this is the insufficient fund error, which is basically returning us that error because we wanted it to also return the balance. So that is how you can try to have the errors of withdrawal. But if we put an amount which is like 12,000, I think you can see here that it shows us that our new balance is 8,000. So that's how you handle exceptions. I want you to try one more custom exception error in your exercise too. Please, the only thing I've tried to do is to use the classes, and I'm going to repeat one more time. The reason why we use the class is basically we want it to handle a specific error case. Are we together? Then the reason why we define the functions, because we want to use the logic that helps us when we want to withdraw money so that we get that message. Okay? So all this, I can still explain it to you in a simple way. Let me just maybe give you a note before I give you an exercise. So that note now. Note. So defining a custom exception, what you do, you just need to use the class, and then the custom error. Custom error. Then you can put in the argument is for exception. Then basically a custom exceptions for specific error cases. So you go ahead and do what? And then define a function that initializes self and the message you want. Okay. Then the super, of course, there's indentation here. The super, which you don't need to pass anything into the argument, and then it will initialize the message and then the self. Yeah. So this one is when you're defining a custom exception. That's why it is different. And then after that, you need to raise exception, which you know. This one, you are an expert now. Raising a custom exception. So all I need to see with custom error handling is how you implement the class that has a function that handles the exceptions. And then you define a function that initializes the self, which basically will check the kind of message that you want to put. So those are the key things that I need. And when you're raising your exceptions, of course, you can now have your logical statements, catch errors. Okay, I can write it for you. It doesn't take long. Let me just write it for you, which you just basically for define, which you can check. You can check a value, because I'm expecting you to use this in your example. So you can give your logic if what? If value is less than maybe 0 or value, whatever the case, then you can raise a custom error and call it value cannot be negative. That's the error message that you want. Then you need to return. Make sure the return is in the same line. Just try to make sure the return is in the same line with the if the return value. Then you can now use the try. Now you can handle the exception with try except and then else if you need, then finally. Okay, good. Try now and say result equals to check value. If it is -10, that is a negative exception, cannot do that. Then the except can be a custom error as E for exceptions. Then you can print a formatted string with F, then you open and say custom error code. Then E, okay, E, then the message. So that is how you try to handle these exceptions. Let me get an exercise now for you. Okay, so this exercise that I want you to do, it deals with custom exceptions, okay? And I don't want it to be very, very, very difficult. I just want it to be very simple for you, so that you can smash it very well. Don't you think I need to give you something which is smaller in terms of the logic? Okay. Okay, let's deal with your age. I know most of you are experts You know, edge cannot be negative, right? You cannot have negative edge. Huh? Create a custom exception invalid error and write a function that raises if this exception if the given age is negative. Handle this custom exception when calling a function. Okay, I think that should be easier for you. Just do it the way I've explained it. It shouldn't be very difficult. Yeah, that's a good question for you. Good exercise for you. So as you're handling it, take note that I've always used the as e because Python has the inbuilt syntax that binds the caught exceptions to variables that is not e. So whenever you're trying to use the as e, just know that it allows the programmer to access the perform while handling these exceptions. So it is commonly used if you're trying to handle these exceptions as e. Is basically, it's a syntax that is commonly used in exception handling to bind the caught exceptions for catching. When you throw an error, you should catch it. And that's why it's being used. It's very commonly used. So that's why you can see here, except as e message, you're trying to catch it with this message. Okay. I can stop sharing. I give you time to do the work and you share your screen when you can. As you're struggling to finish up the assignment, allow me pick a cup of coffee. It's just within here. Once you're ready, you can share your screen. Let me just have a cup of coffee as I wait for your solution. Hello, someone is saying hello, guys. Please, this is not a greeting session. Majid. Guys, share your screen. Please share your screen. Also, don't forget to register. The link for registration is in the what? It's in the chat. Please share your screen. Okay, let me give you some few minutes to get done. Share your screen. We end this lecture so that I can get time to interact with the people I'm working with. Of course, that's all about exception handling. You will know when to use it, especially. Victor, is that
Yes.
I can't even. Eh?
Victoire.
Victoire. Which
Yes.
country are you from?
Chad.
Chad.
Yes.
We need to be friends. Me, I want to travel in each and every country. Quiet. Okay, go ahead, please, and explain what you've done. Victoire. He ran away. Okay, another person.
Hope my screen is visible.
Sure, Lauben.
Yeah, so from my screen, I've created like a class of custom exception, which is invalid edge error, taking in the argument of the exception. Then I've defined a method for initializing the class. So it's taking in like self for initializing the class itself, then edge. Then I'm using like a message which prints like the invalid edge and shows like edge can never be negative. Then I've just used my super method to call my initialization method. So I've also defined like a custom method, which is for checking edge. Then if edge is less than 0, then I raise my custom exception, which is invalid edge error. Then from there, I print format like if edge is valid, if it is greater than 0, then I decide to print the edge, and I use print format. Then down, I try to do some bit of custom exception handling. Then in my try block, like I try to get the edge from the standard input from the user. Then from there, then I call I call my code. I call my method check because it is the one that is having like a possibility of causing what an exception, because it is raising an exception. It has like a raise keyword, which is used to evoke like our custom exception class. So I call the method from there to check if the edge is valid or not. Then in my exception block, I try to access the I try to access the custom class exception error, and I try to print out like the message on the screen that is triggered when my invalid edge error, like that custom exception, when it occurs. I try to access like specific message that is triggered. Then finally, I try to clean up my code by using the finally block, which prints out like edge validation completed. So if I can expand my terminal and I try to run the code, perhaps let me first clean up like the previous blocks of code. So here I can now start like with the prompt on the screen, which is requiring me like to put the edge. So let's say if I put an edge of maybe if I put an edge that is maybe negative or that is 0, maybe let me start with negative 76, and I see how the code executes. So I can see like I get my exception error, which shows like invalid edge, like edge cannot be negative. So and I also get my final block, which always executes regardless of whether the exception occurs or not. So when I try to run the program, maybe with some bit of valid information, let's say I put 76. So like when I run like those checks in my check method, whatever, it shows like edge is valid. Then let me first try when I try to use a string and I see like what can really happen if I try to use maybe a string as edge, because sometimes like I'm taking in like edge input. So if I put like 5, because 5 is ultimately a string, it is not an integer, then ultimately I can still, I try to see like the int pass, like the int pass error is also triggered on the screen. So I guess that's all I had. Like, thanks for listening.
Thanks. And I also have to admit that you're understanding it. I also have to admit that you're also good at explaining the work you do. And I must tell you that if you continue down the road that way, surely you will have an A from me. I am not mean with my A's. So just encourage. And I like people, by the way, don't be surprised that Loben will have an A. I like people who contribute very well in class, because I can see, and there's nothing else. Me, I have to be honest. I give credit where I see. If you are this quiet guy like Edgar, Nancha, class rep, what happened? You don't want to talk. We have and now those ones who don't attend my lectures and are not here, I see only 28. Forget about getting an A. Forget about it. I normally punish people properly when it comes to attendance. It shows you are not serious. We are studying online where you don't even need to move to campus. You just buy data of 2K, 2,000 shillings, or you can just buy a route of 130 of Airtel and use unlimited internet the whole month, 130K. You have come to, you are investing your money. So please stop being the drama. You don't attend my class and you expect to pass. You wait and see. I want to tell you point blank. If you don't have an A, don't even come following me. I only deal with serious guys. I see them. I even note their name. Now I have Loben's name here. I just want to keep monitoring his source code. And me, I give marks there and then. That's why I always tell you, upload your work. This world is for talking. If you can't express yourself, no one will know how intelligent you are. You have to contribute. Shadia, have you heard? Elisha, have you heard? You'll be here attending like you're attending a church service. Forget about it. You will never see an A in this. I have to assure you, if you are here and you don't contribute, you will get a 7, 6, and 9. Joke with me. I want people who are serious. Yes? Takia. Let me give you a chance to talk. Good morning.
Okay. This is not Nasa study, and this is my code I'm having. Okay. This is not Nasa study, and this is my code I'm having. I created a custom exception by creating a class invite edge error, and it's inheriting the exception class. So this is the constructor, as you see, and this is my function checking the edge. So if the edge is less than 0, it will raise an error, invalid edge error, and then it will print. If this statement is not valid, it will print your edge. And so here I try to input the edge is 20, and then I call the check edge method or function. So if your edge, and if it throws an error, this except will be called and it will print the error message. And this is the final block which executes whether the error happens or not. So when I run my code, you will see that my edge will be printed as you are 20 years old. And if I change this one to a negative, like -1, they will tell me that error invalid edge is a non-negative. That means edge cannot be a negative. That's what I'm having.
Thank you. Yeah, at least the concept is clear. Okay, thank you so much, Takia. I want to end this lecture, and I listen to those ones who are working with me. I don't want to consume all your data bundles. Please also don't forget to subscribe to those YouTube channels. I will start uploading all these lectures up so that maybe you can go and follow them, especially the exercises, and see the key concepts onto the masterclass, Jeff masterclass. But if you also want to follow and see more about my lifestyle, there's also a fun channel there. You could also subscribe to it. But yes, your hand is up.
I wanted to inquire, for example, in Java, we can write multiple exceptions in one catch block. Is it possible with this in Python?
Have you tried it? First try it before you so that you give us the best experience.
Okay, though I had one and it tried to fail, but let me try again.
Okay, Alvin. Yes, Alvin, your hand is up.
Yes, I wanted to ask about this super keyword, the one we write in the init function.
Yes.
How does it work? Because
The super keywords basically initializes the constructors. Unless you don't know what a constructor is.
I know what it means.
Okay. Yes, Abe. You can unmute, please. Unmute.
I wanted to add on what Alvin was trying to inquire about the super keyword, according to what I have observed. As we see that when we're implementing custom exceptions, the custom class, the class we define, it tries to inherit from the custom class, so from the exception class. Now in this exception class, we have a constructor, and this constructor by default, it has its own message. So what do we do? Because you see that in the exception below down, we try to log the exception or to print the exception. Now, we wouldn't wish to print the exception that has been defined by default in the exception class that from which we are inheriting from. So we use the super keyword to refer to the constructor of the exception class, and then we pass in the default message that will be initialized in that exception class such that it's the one that is printed and not the one that is default in that exception class.
Okay, thank you, Abe. You have explained
Yeah.
it. I just wanted to figure out a discussion about it. But he asked for the use. Of course, you mentioned it clearly, is for calling the parent class method. That is one. Okay? And then two, it is used for initializing the parent class, I mean. Then three, it is used to avoid direct parent class names. Those are the three key uses of the superclass. Calling the parent class method, initializing the parent class, avoiding direct parent class name. That is the main use. It's a built-in function in Python, of course, which calls methods from the parent class within the child class. We have not handled inheritance, and then we don't know what is a parent class, we don't know what is a child class. But in most cases, when you have already handled inheritance is like you're getting some properties, okay, from your parent. So we will talk more about it. So it basically allows you to do so. That's why it initializes the constructors in the parent class so that you can go ahead and call functions or methods. Yeah, that is it. Let me stop recording here so that our next bit of discussion doesn't go